Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for being here for this hearing.
For 5 Utah minutes.
I
Okay.
want to take a moment on Section 1983, which, as you know, is the primary vehicle for assessing liability for police misconduct. And as you also know, the primary defense against that liability, and it's even a pretrial defense, is the defense of qualified immunity, which is the subject of the Booker-Harris legislation. Now, qualified immunity, as I understand it, limits liability, narrows the window of conduct for which an officer can be held liable, and its original purpose was to protect the individual officer. At the same time that it does that, however, it has the effect of depriving the injured or wronged person of their recovery. And also, it dulls the signal back into the agency that something is wrong because they got away with it because of qualified immunity. So as we've heard today, police officers are actually almost always indemnified by their departments. And it's interesting to think of it because the only way you get by qualified immunity is if you had if a reasonable person would have known that what you did was unconstitutional. And
reasonable police officer.
Yeah, and that group of people who reasonably should have known that what they did was unconstitutional, they're the ones that are getting indemnified.
That's right.
So it's not like there's some bad cases where we don't indemnify, and the good cases we do. Indemnification is the constant here, pretty much. And in addition to the study Senator Harris cited, there's another report that described the indemnification as occurring virtually always. So one wonders, why should the department be obliged to pay? And it seems that there are a lot of obvious reasons. One, they set the policy that the officers follow. Two, they set the procedures that the officers follow. Three, they establish the training that the officers follow. Four, they dominate the culture that the officers follow. And finally, they provide the discipline that the officers must adhere to. They are the employers in a nutshell. So I look outside of the police cases to regular employer liability, and there you find an ancient doctrine, vicarious liability, respondeat superior, in which if you're acting within the scope of your employment, your employer owns it.
That's right.
And UPS drivers drive really safely because UPS knows they own those wrecks and they're going to make darn sure. A private company that is paying for security services is going to lean towards hiring bonded security professionals because they know that if they screw up, the company owns it. So the incentives are in the right place. So here is my worry, and here's what I'd like you to think about. We've got a couple of choices here. We can leave qualified immunity alone. I think that would be a terrible mistake. So that means we should strip out qualified immunity. And then we can do one of two things. We can either just do that and hope that indemnity survives, but Mr. Merritt, as you said, there's going to be a flood of cases that qualified immunity defenses have kept out of the courtrooms. And right now, indemnification of officers stands on a fairly rickety structure of a mix of policy, practice, municipal ordinance, state law. You agree with that?
So far, yes, sir.
Yeah, you've tried these cases, you know this. So if there's this surge of cases because we've stripped qualified immunity away, it seems to me that we also need to lock down where everybody is right now, which is indemnification. That officers are now virtually always indemnified. After we've stripped away qualified immunity, they should stay indemnified. That vicarious liability, one of the oldest and most established doctrines in the law, would provide that, and that would be a fairly sensible backstop to make sure that Chairman Graham's concerned that an officer who does something wrong doesn't lose his house, and to also meet all of our concern that the departments get behind the policies, the procedures, the training, the culture, and the discipline that will, to your point, Mr. Merritt, prevent these things from happening in the first place. So given those three choices, leave qualified immunity alone, strip out qualified immunity but don't touch indemnification, or strip out qualified indemnity and protect indemnification, make sure that officers remain indemnified, which would you recommend?
I would recommend, protecting or moving towards respondeat superior, which are three options. It's the
third
option. That ensures the superior individual, the entity, does a quality check on their employees.
It's nothing new under the law. Respondeat superior has been around forever, and it's the status quo in these cases as a matter of practice, is it not?
That's correct.
Ms. Gupta, anything to add? I've gone over 30 seconds, so keep it short.
No, I agree.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll yield back the time I've gone over.
Okay, thank you.